David stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the third time that morning. Today marked his first day at Thompson and Associates, one of Lagos's most prestigious law firms. At 28, he had worked tirelessly to reach this moment, graduating top of his class from the University of Lagos and completing his bar certification with distinction. His mother's prayers and his father's sacrifices had finally paid off. The elevator doors opened on the 15th floor, revealing a world of polished marble and glass walls. David stepped out, his leather briefcase clutched tightly in his hand. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, directed him to the Human Resources Department where he would complete his orientation. As he walked through the corridors, David noticed the buzz of activity around him. Lawyers in expensive suits moved purposefully between offices, their phones constantly ringing. This was the environment he had dreamed of joining, where important cases were won and careers were built. 3 floors up, Chioma sat at her desk reviewing a complex merger document. As the lead financial analyst for the firm's corporate division, she had earned a reputation for her meticulous attention to detail and sharp analytical mind. At 26, she was already being considered for promotion to senior analyst, AI, position that would make her one of the youngest people to hold such a role at the firm. Chioma had always been driven by numbers and logic. Growing up in Enugu, she had shown exceptional promise in mathematics, earning a scholarship to study economics at the American University of Nigeria. Her parents, both teachers, had instilled in her the value of education and hard work. She had never allowed personal relationships to distract her from her career goals. The morning passed quickly for both David and Chioma, though neither knew of the other's existence yet. David spent his time meeting various department heads and learning about the firm's procedures. His supervisor, Mr. Adebayo, seemed impressed by his credentials and assigned him to work on several ongoing cases. During lunch break, David decided to explore the building's cafeteria on the 12th floor. The space was modern and bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of Lagos Island. He grabbed a tray and selected jollof rice with grilled chicken, one of his favorite meals. As he searched for an empty table, David noticed a woman sitting alone near the window, completely absorbed in reading what appeared to be financial reports while eating her salad. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant afro, and she wore a navy blue blazer that suggested she was a professional rather than support staff. There was something about her focused concentration that intrigued him. Chioma felt someone's presence and looked up to find a tall, well-dressed man standing near her table with a tray in his hands. He had an honest face and gentle eyes that seemed to be asking permission to sit down. The cafeteria was quite full, so she gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Thank you," David said as he settled into the seat. "I'm David Okoro, just started today in the litigation department." "Chioma Okafor Financial Analysis," she replied, briefly looking up from her papers before returning to her work. David tried to make conversation, asking about her role and how long she had worked at the firm. Chioma answered politely, but kept her responses short and professional. She had learned early in her career that workplace friendships could sometimes complicate professional relationships, especially with male colleagues. Despite her reserved manner, David found himself drawn to Chioma's intelligence and poise. The way she explained complex financial concepts with clarity showed her deep understanding of her work. He respected her dedication and didn't push for more personal conversation when it was clear she preferred to focus on her documents. Over the following weeks, David and Chioma began encountering each other regularly in the cafeteria, elevators, and during interdepartmental meetings. David was working on a corporate fraud case that required financial analysis, and Mr. Adebayo suggested he consult with Chioma's team for assistance. Their first professional collaboration took place in Conference Room B, where Chioma presented her findings on suspicious financial transactions. David was impressed by her thorough research and the logical way she presented evidence. Her analysis would be crucial in building their case against the defendant company. "Your work is exceptional," David told her after the meeting. "The way you traced those hidden transactions through multiple offshore accounts was brilliant." Chioma felt a small flutter of pride at his genuine appreciation. Most lawyers she worked with simply took her analysis and moved on without acknowledging the complexity of her work. David seemed different, actually interested in understanding the methodology behind her conclusions. As they collaborated on the case over several weeks, David and Chioma developed a comfortable working relationship. David would stop by her office with questions about financial regulations, and Chioma found herself looking forward to their discussions. His legal perspective helped her understand how her analysis would be presented in court, making her work more focused and effective. One evening, as they both worked late to meet a deadline, David brought coffee from the building's cafe to Chioma's office. She was surprised by the thoughtful gesture, especially since he had remembered that she preferred her coffee black with 1 sugar. "You didn't have to do this," Chioma said, accepting the warm cup gratefully. "We're a team on this case," David replied. "Besides, I needed the caffeine just as much as you did." They worked side by side until nearly 10 o'clock that night, reviewing documents and preparing their joint presentation for the next day's client meeting. As they finally packed up their materials, Chioma realized she had enjoyed the collaboration more than any other project in her career. Walking to the parking garage together, they talked about their backgrounds and career aspirations. David learned that Chioma was passionate about using financial analysis to expose corporate corruption, while she discovered that David had chosen law because he wanted to advocate for justice and fairness. Standing beside her car, Chioma hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Thank you for making this case so engaging. I don't usually enjoy working with the legal team, but you made it different." David smiled, sensing that this was a significant admission from someone as reserved as Chioma. "Maybe we'll have the chance to work together again." As they drove away in separate directions, both carried with them the beginning of something that would soon grow beyond professional respect into something deeper and more complex than either had anticipated. 3 months into their working relationship, David and Chioma had successfully closed the corporate fraud case, securing a favorable settlement for their client. The victory had earned both of them recognition from the firm's partners, and their collaboration had become the gold standard for interdepartmental cooperation. David found himself seeking reasons to visit Chioma's office, often bringing legitimate questions about other cases, but secretly hoping for longer conversations. He had learned that she enjoyed classical music and often worked late into the evening when the building was quiet. Her dedication impressed him, but he also worried that she was pushing herself too hard. Chioma, for her part, had begun to notice things about David that went beyond their professional interactions. The way he treated the building's security guards and cleaning staff with genuine respect spoke to his character. She had observed him staying late to help junior associates with their cases, never seeking credit for his mentorship. One Thursday afternoon, Chioma received an urgent call from her mother in Enugu. Her father had been hospitalized after experiencing chest pains, and the doctors were running tests to determine if he had suffered a heart attack. Chioma's hands shook as she tried to book the next flight home while simultaneously arranging coverage for her pending projects. David happened to pass by her office and noticed her distress. Through the glass partition, he could see her wiping tears from her eyes while frantically typing on her computer. Without hesitation, he knocked gently on her door. "Chioma, is everything all right?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. She looked up, her usual composure completely shattered. "My father is in the hospital. I need to get home to Enugu, but I have 3 urgent reports due tomorrow, and the Landmark Industries presentation is on Monday." David immediately sat down across from her desk. "What do you need me to do?" His simple offer of help, without questions or conditions, broke down the professional wall Chioma had carefully maintained. She explained her father's condition and the work commitments that were preventing her from leaving immediately. "Give me your files," David said firmly. "I'll coordinate with other analysts to handle the reports, and I'll personally ensure the landmark presentation is ready. You need to be with your family." Chioma stared at him in amazement. "David, you don't understand financial analysis well enough to oversee these projects. And you have your own cases to manage. Then teach me," he replied. "Right now. Show me what needs to be done, and I'll make sure it happens." For the next 2 hours, Chioma explained the intricacies of her pending projects, while David took detailed notes. He asked intelligent questions and demonstrated a remarkable ability to grasp complex concepts quickly. By the time she finished, he had a clear understanding of what needed to be accomplished in her absence. As Chioma packed her briefcase to leave for the airport, David handed her his personal phone number. "Call me if you need anything, or if you just want updates on the projects. Don't worry about work while you're dealing with family matters." The flight to Enugu gave Chioma time to think about David's unexpected kindness. In her experience, colleagues were helpful when it served their own interests, but David had offered to take on significant additional work with no benefit to himself. His actions revealed a generosity of spirit that she had rarely encountered in corporate environments. Her father's condition turned out to be less serious than initially feared. The chest pains were caused by severe acid reflux rather than heart problems, but the doctors recommended several days of observation and lifestyle changes. Chioma spent the weekend with her parents, helping them understand the medical recommendations and arranging follow-up care. Throughout her time in Enugu, David sent her brief text messages with work updates, always ending with questions about her father's health. His messages were professional but warm, showing genuine interest in her family's well-being rather than just the status of work projects. On Sunday evening, Chioma called David to discuss her return to Lagos. She was surprised when he answered on the first ring despite the late hour. "How is your father doing?" he asked immediately. "Much better, thank you. The doctors say he can go home tomorrow. I should be back in the office by Tuesday." "That's wonderful news. Take as much time as you need. Everything here is under control. Chioma hesitated before asking, "David, why did you help me? I mean, really help me, not just offer token assistance." There was a pause before David answered. "Because you needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. That's what decent people do for each other." His simple response touched something deep in Chioma's heart. In a world where people often calculated the cost and benefit of every action, David's unconditional kindness felt like a rare gift. When Chioma returned to Lagos, she was amazed to find that David had not only managed her project successfully, but had also improved several of her analytical models. The Landmark Industries presentation had been a tremendous success, earning praise from the client and the firm's partners. "You went above and beyond what I asked," Chioma told him, reviewing the work he had completed. "I wanted to make sure everything met your standards," David replied. "Your reputation for excellence is well-deserved, and I didn't want to diminish it in any way." That afternoon, Chioma did something she had never done before in her professional life. She invited David to have dinner with her, not as colleagues but as friends. She chose a quiet restaurant in Victoria Island, away from places where they might encounter other people from the firm. Over dinner, they talked about their families, their dreams, and their fears. Chioma shared stories about growing up as the daughter of teachers in Enugu, while David spoke about his mother's struggle to raise him as a single parent in Ibadan. They discovered shared values about integrity, hard work, and the importance of using their skills to make a positive difference in the world. As the evening progressed, Chioma realized that her feelings for David had evolved far beyond professional respect or gratitude. His intelligence, kindness, and genuine character had touched her in ways she had not expected. For the first time in her adult life, she found herself wanting to share her life with another person. David, meanwhile, was falling deeper in love with Chioma with each passing moment. Her strength, dedication, and the vulnerability she had shown during her family crisis revealed layers of her personality that made her even more attractive to him. He admired her professional accomplishments, but he was drawn to her heart and her capacity for deep feeling. As they walked to their cars after dinner, David gently took Chioma's hand. She didn't pull away, instead intertwining her fingers with his. Standing under the streetlight in the restaurant's parking lot, they both acknowledged silently that their relationship had crossed into territory that would change everything between them. "Chioma," David said softly, "I need you to know that spending this evening with you has been the highlight of my time in Lagos. You're an extraordinary woman, and I'm grateful for the chance to know you better." Chioma looked into his eyes and saw honesty and affection that made her heart race. "David, I feel the same way, but we need to be careful. Office relationships can be complicated." "I know," he replied, "but some things are worth the complications." The weeks following their dinner marked the beginning of a careful dance between David and Chioma. They maintained their professional demeanor during office hours, but began meeting for coffee before work and occasionally sharing lunch at restaurants away from their colleagues. Watchful eyes. Chioma had always prided herself on keeping her personal and professional lives completely separate, but David's presence in both spheres created a complexity she had never navigated before. She found herself looking forward to their morning coffee meetings with an anticipation that surprised her. David had a way of making even the most mundane topics interesting, and his perspective on life often challenged her own assumptions. David was equally careful to maintain professional boundaries at work, but he struggled with the intensity of his growing feelings for Chioma. He had dated before, but never had he met someone who engaged both his mind and his heart so completely. Chioma's intelligence was matched by her compassion, and her strength was balanced by moments of vulnerability that made him want to protect and support her. Their secret relationship faced its first real test when the firm announced a major restructuring. Thompson and Associates had acquired a smaller law firm, and the merger required careful integration of staff and resources. David learned that Chioma was being considered for promotion to senior financial analyst, a position that would put her in charge of the entire financial analysis department. The promotion opportunity created tension neither had anticipated. If Chioma accepted the position, she would have significantly more responsibility and authority, potentially making their relationship more complicated from an office politics perspective. David wrestled with conflicting emotions, genuinely wanting Chioma to succeed while worrying about how her advancement might affect their relationship. Chioma confided in David about her mixed feelings regarding the promotion. The position represented everything she had worked toward professionally, but accepting it would mean longer hours and increased scrutiny from the firm's partners. She was also concerned about how their relationship might be perceived if she gained a more prominent position in the company. "You have to take this opportunity," David told her during one of their morning coffee meetings. "You've earned this promotion through your excellent work, and you can't let personal concerns hold you back professionally." His encouragement meant everything to Chioma, but she could see the worry in his eyes. They both understood that success often came with sacrifices, and they were beginning to realize that their relationship might be one of those sacrifices. The situation became more complicated when David was assigned to work on the legal aspects of the firm merger, requiring him to collaborate closely with Chioma on due diligence and financial integration issues. Working together professionally while managing their personal feelings required incredible discipline from both of them. During late evening work sessions in Conference Room A, they found themselves alone together, reviewing merger documents and financial projections. The proximity and shared intensity of their work created moments of almost unbearable tension. Sometimes their hands would brush while reaching for the same document, or their eyes would meet across the conference table with an intensity that had nothing to do with their professional tasks. One evening, as they worked past 10 o'clock on particularly complex integration issues, the building's cleaning crew had already finished their rounds, leaving David and Chioma completely alone. On their floor, the silence was broken only by the hum of air conditioning and the occasional sound of papers shuffling. Chioma stood to stretch her back, and David found himself watching her with undisguised admiration. When she caught him looking, neither of them looked away. The professional distance they had maintained so carefully finally crumbled as David stood and crossed to where she was standing. "Chioma," he said softly, "I can't pretend anymore that I don't care about you beyond our work relationship." She looked up at him, her heart racing. "David, you know how complicated this could become?" "I know," he replied, gently cupping her, face in his hands. "But I also know that I'm falling in love with you, and I think you might be feeling the same way." Chioma's resolve melted as she realized he was absolutely right. She had been fighting her feelings for weeks, but the truth was undeniable. "I am falling in love with you," she whispered, "but I'm terrified of what that means for both of us." David leaned down and kissed her softly, a gentle confirmation of the feelings they had both been harboring. The kiss was tender and full of promise, but also carried the weight of the complications they both understood lay ahead. When they separated, Chioma rested her forehead against his chest, feeling both elated and overwhelmed. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We figure it out together," David replied, holding her close. "Whatever challenges we face, we'll handle them as a team." Their relationship shifted dramatically after that evening. They began spending more time together outside of work, careful to avoid places where they might encounter colleagues. David discovered that Chioma loved art galleries and classical concerts, while she learned about his passion for playing basketball and his volunteer work with underprivileged children. On weekends, they would take long walks along the Lagos waterfront, talking about everything from their childhood dreams to their professional aspirations. These conversations revealed the depth of their compatibility and strengthened their emotional connection beyond the initial physical attraction. Chioma introduced David to her love of cooking traditional Nigerian dishes, and he became a willing assistant in her kitchen, learning to prepare pepper soup and plantain while she shared stories about recipes passed down from her grandmother. David, in turn, showed her his favorite spots around Lagos, including a small bookstore in Surulere where he spent hours browsing philosophy and legal texts. Their relationship deepened quickly, perhaps accelerated by the need for secrecy that made every moment together feel precious and stolen. They learned each other's habits and preferences, developing the kind of intimacy that usually takes couples much longer to achieve. However, the stress of maintaining their secret was beginning to show. Both were naturally honest people, and hiding their relationship from colleagues and friends felt increasingly uncomfortable. Chioma found herself having to lie to her assistant about why she was leaving work early or declining invitations to office social events. David struggled with casual questions from male colleagues about his dating life, not wanting to lie but unable to tell the truth. The situation reached a crisis point when Chioma's promotion to senior financial analyst was officially announced. The promotion came with a significant salary increase and her own corner office, but it also meant that she would now attend the firm's monthly partner meetings and be involved in high-level strategic decisions. At the celebration dinner organized by the firm, David watched from across the room as colleagues congratulated Chioma on her achievement. He felt immensely proud of her success, but also acutely aware of the growing distance between their professional positions. As a junior associate, he was several levels below her new position in the firm's hierarchy. Later that evening, after The celebration had ended. David and Chioma met at their favorite coffee shop to discuss the implications of her promotion. The conversation was difficult and emotional, as both realized that their relationship was entering uncharted territory, where the risks were higher and the potential consequences more severe. Chioma's new position as senior financial analyst brought unexpected challenges that tested both her professional abilities and her relationship with David. The corner office came with glass walls that made privacy nearly impossible, and her increased visibility meant that every interaction with colleagues was subject to scrutiny from the partners. Within her first week in the new role, Chioma discovered that managing a team of 6 analysts required skills she had never fully developed. While her technical expertise was unquestionable, leading people involved navigating personalities, mediating conflicts, and making decisions that affected others' careers. The responsibility weighed heavily on her, especially since she was younger than several of the analysts now reporting to her. David watched from a distance as Chioma struggled with her new responsibilities, wanting desperately to offer support, but knowing that their relationship made such support complicated. During their secret evening meetings, he listened as she shared her frustrations about team dynamics and the pressure from partners to deliver increasingly complex analyses under tight deadlines. "I feel like I'm drowning," Chioma confessed to David during one of their walks along the waterfront. "Everyone expects me to have all the answers, but half the time I'm making it up as I go along." David took her hand, offering the comfort of physical connection that they could only share. "Away from the office. You're putting too much pressure on yourself. You were promoted because you're brilliant at what you do. Leadership skills develop with experience." His words were reassuring, but both knew that her struggles at work were affecting their relationship. The stress was making Chioma more distant and irritable, and the secrecy was becoming harder to maintain as her profile within the firm increased. The situation became more complicated when David was assigned to work on a high-profile criminal defense case that required extensive financial analysis. The logical choice for the financial analyst on the case was Chioma's department, but both recognized the potential problems of working together professionally while their personal relationship remained secret. Mr. Adebayo, David's supervisor, specifically requested Chioma's involvement because of her reputation for thorough analysis and her experience with complex financial crimes. Neither David nor Chioma felt they could refuse without raising suspicions about their reluctance to work together. Their first team meeting on the criminal case was awkward and tense. Chioma maintained strict professionalism, addressing David formally as Mr. Okoro and avoiding eye contact whenever possible. Other team members noticed the unusual coldness between two people who had previously worked well together, but no one commented directly. David found the professional distance painful but necessary. Watching Chioma lead the meeting with confidence and expertise filled him with pride, but being unable to acknowledge their personal connection felt like a betrayal of their relationship. The contrast between their public interactions and their private intimacy created an emotional strain that affected both of them. As they worked on the case over several weeks, maintaining professional boundaries became increasingly difficult. Late evening work sessions were particularly challenging, as the empty building and shared intensity of their work reminded them of the night when they had first acknowledged their feelings for each other. One evening, while reviewing financial records in Chioma's office, David noticed her rubbing her temples in a gesture he recognized as indicating a severe headache. Without thinking, he stood behind her chair and began gently massaging her shoulders, a gesture of care that had become natural in their private moments. Chioma tensed immediately, aware that her glass office walls made them visible to anyone passing in the hallway. "David, you can't do that here," she whispered urgently. Though she didn't move away from his touch, he immediately stepped back, realizing his mistake. "I'm sorry. I saw that you were in pain and just reacted." The incident highlighted how difficult it was becoming to separate their personal and professional selves. Both were naturally affectionate people, and suppressing their instincts to care for each other publicly was taking an emotional toll. Their relationship faced another test when office rumors began circulating about Chioma's rapid promotion and her personal life. Some colleagues whispered that she must have had help from someone influential within the firm, while others speculated about whether she was dating anyone. The gossip was typical of any workplace, but it made both David and Chioma paranoid about their interactions being scrutinized. Victoria Nwosu, one of the senior associates in David's department, began paying particular attention to his behavior around Chioma. Victoria was ambitious and observant, and she had noticed subtle changes in both David and Chioma since the promotion. During casual conversations with David, she would drop Chioma's name and watch for his reactions. "That Chioma is quite impressive," Victoria commented one day while she and David were reviewing case files. "I heard she's completely dedicated to her career, though. Doesn't seem to have time for a personal life." David managed to keep his expression neutral, but Victoria's probing made him uncomfortable. He began to wonder if their secret was as well kept as they believed. The pressure of maintaining their secret relationship while working together professionally began affecting both their work performance and their personal happiness. Chioma found herself becoming short-tempered with her team members, while David struggled to concentrate on cases that didn't involve working with her. Their evening meetings, once a source of joy and connection, became dominated by discussions of workplace stress and fears about discovery. The spontaneity and lightness that had characterized the early days of their relationship were being replaced by anxiety and careful planning. During a particularly difficult week, when both were working long hours on the criminal case, they decided to take a weekend trip to Abuja to get away from Lagos and the pressures of their workplace. The trip was their first extended time together away from the city, and both hoped it would help them reconnect and find clarity about their relationship's future. The weekend in Abuja was both wonderful and bittersweet. Away from their colleagues and the familiar environments where they had to maintain their secret, David and Chioma were able to relax and enjoy each other's company without constraint. They visited the National Mosque and the Nigerian National Theater, sharing experiences as a couple rather than as secret lovers. However, the weekend also forced them to confront the reality that their relationship was becoming unsustainable in its current form. The constant stress of secrecy was affecting both their professional performance and their personal happiness. They both realized that something would have to change, but neither was sure what that change should involve. On their last evening in Abuja, sitting on the hotel balcony overlooking the city lights, David and Chioma had the most serious conversation of their relationship. They discussed the possibility of making their relationship public, the potential consequences for their careers, and whether their love was strong enough to withstand the challenges they would face. "I love you," David said, taking her hand as they watched the sunset. "But I don't want our relationship to damage your career or mine. You've worked too hard to get where you are." Chioma squeezed his hand, tears forming in her eyes. "I love you too, but you're right. We need to make some decisions about our future. This limbo we're living in isn't fair to either of us." They flew back to Lagos the next day, knowing that their relationship was at a crossroads. The choices they made in the coming weeks would determine not only their personal happiness, but also their professional futures. The weeks following their Abuja trip brought unexpected developments that forced David and Chioma to confront the future of their relationship sooner than they had anticipated. The criminal case they were working on together had attracted significant media attention, and the firm's partners were closely monitoring every aspect of the legal team's performance. During a crucial client meeting, David presented the legal arguments while Chioma provided financial evidence supporting their defense strategy. Their professional collaboration was seamless and impressive, earning praise from both the client and the firm's senior partners. However, their obvious professional chemistry also attracted unwanted attention from colleagues who began speculating about the nature of their relationship. Mr. Thompson, the firm's founding partner, called David into his office after the client meeting to commend his work on the case. However, The conversation took an unexpected turn when Mr. Thompson mentioned his observations about the legal and financial team's collaboration. "David, your work with Ms. Okafor has been exemplary," Mr. Thompson said, studying David's face carefully. "The two of you seem to have developed an excellent working relationship. I hope you understand the importance of maintaining professional boundaries, especially given her recent promotion." The warning was subtle but clear. David assured Mr. Thompson that all interactions with Chioma were strictly professional, but he left the meeting feeling shaken. It was becoming apparent that their secret was not as well kept as they had believed. That evening, David shared the conversation with Chioma during their usual walk along the waterfront. She was visibly upset by the news, understanding the implications immediately. "This is exactly what I was afraid would happen," Chioma said, her voice tight with anxiety. "People are watching us, looking for any sign of impropriety. If they discover our relationship, it could damage both our reputations." David tried to reassure her, but he shared her concerns. In the conservative environment of their law firm, office relationships were generally discouraged, especially between people at different levels of the organizational hierarchy. Their fears were confirmed the following week, when Victoria Nwosu approached David with information that made his blood run cold. Victoria had apparently been conducting her own investigation into David and Chioma's relationship, motivated by professional jealousy and personal ambition. "David, I think you should know that people are talking about you and Chioma," Victoria said with false concern. "Someone saw you two having dinner together at that restaurant in Victoria Island. People are starting to ask questions." David tried to maintain his composure, but Victoria's smug expression told him that she knew more than she was revealing. Her next words confirmed his worst fears. "I like you, David, and I'd hate to see your career damaged by poor choices. Maybe you should be more careful about your associations, especially with people in senior positions." The threat was implicit but unmistakable. Victoria was positioning herself to expose their relationship if it served her interests. David realized that he and Chioma were no longer in control of their secret. That evening, David met Chioma at their usual coffee shop to share Victoria's veiled threats. Chioma listened in silence, her face growing paler with each detail. When David finished speaking, she sat quietly for several minutes before responding. "We have to end this," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't risk my career, and I won't let you risk yours either. We've been selfish, thinking we could have both our professional success and our personal happiness." David felt his heart breaking, but he understood her logic. "There has to be another way. We can't just throw away what we have together." "What do we have? Really?" Chioma asked, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Secret meetings, hidden conversations, constant fear of discovery. That's not a real relationship, David. That's just an elaborate fantasy we've been living." Their conversation continued for hours, both of them exploring every possible alternative to ending their relationship. They discussed the possibility of one of them finding employment at another firm, but both recognized that such a move would damage their careers in Lagos's tight-knit legal community. They also considered the option of making their relationship public and accepting whatever consequences followed. However, both understood that such a decision could result in disciplinary action from the firm, damage to their professional reputations, and potential limitations on future career opportunities. As the evening wore on, both David and Chioma began to accept that their relationship, as much as they cherished it, had become unsustainable. The price of continuing their secret affair was becoming too high for both of them to pay. "I want you to know that these past months with you have been the happiest of my adult life," David told Chioma as they prepared to leave the coffee shop. "Whatever happens, I don't regret falling in love with you." Chioma reached across the table and took his hand, not caring who might see them in the dimly lit cafe. I don't regret it either. You've shown me what real love feels like, and I'll always be grateful for that. They agreed to maintain professional distance at work while taking time to consider their options. Both hoped that a solution might present itself, but both also began preparing emotionally for the possibility that their relationship might have to end. The following days at work were torture for both of them. They maintained strict professionalism during the day, but the emotional strain was visible to anyone who knew them well. Chioma threw herself into her work with even greater intensity, staying late into the evening to avoid thinking about her personal situation. David found himself making mistakes on routine legal tasks, his concentration broken by thoughts of what he might be losing. Their professional collaboration on the criminal case continued, but the easy communication and natural chemistry they had previously shared was replaced by formal, stilted interactions. Other team members noticed the change but attributed it to work pressure and the case's high profile. The crisis point came when Mr. Adebayo assigned David to work on a new case that would require him to travel to Port Harcourt for several weeks. The assignment was a sign of confidence in David's abilities, but it also meant extended separation from Chioma at a time when their relationship was most fragile. The night before David's departure to Port Harcourt, he and Chioma met one final time at the same waterfront where they had shared so many meaningful conversations. The Lagos skyline glittered in the distance, but neither of them felt any joy in the familiar beauty of the scene they had once treasured. 3 weeks, David said, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Maybe the distance will give us both clarity about what we really want. Chioma nodded, though her heart was breaking. Maybe it's better this way. We can see how it feels to live without each other, without the constant stress of hiding. They walked along the water in silence, both knowing this might be their last private moment together. The weight of unspoken words hung heavy between them, but neither seemed able to find the right thing to say. David's assignment in Port Harcourt proved to be more complex than initially anticipated. The case involved a major oil company accused of environmental violations, and David found himself working 16-hour days, interviewing witnesses and gathering evidence across multiple locations in the Niger Delta region. The intensity of the work provided a welcome distraction from his thoughts about Chioma, but quiet moments in his hotel room brought waves of loneliness and regret. He found himself reaching for his phone to text her updates about his day, then stopping himself, remembering their agreement to maintain distance. Back in Lagos, Chioma was facing her own challenges. The criminal case they had worked on together was entering its final phase, requiring her to testify as an expert witness. Standing in the courtroom, presenting her financial analysis to the judge and jury, she felt David's absence acutely. Their collaboration had made her a better analyst, and working without his legal perspective left her feeling incomplete. After her testimony, which was well received and helped secure a favorable verdict for their client, Chioma received congratulations from colleagues and partners. The professional success should have felt triumphant, but instead it felt hollow without David there to share the victory. Meanwhile, Victoria Nwosu had noticed David's absence and Chioma's subdued demeanor. During a casual conversation with other associates, she made pointed comments about how some people seemed to be struggling with recent changes in work assignments. It's interesting how some people become so dependent on specific working relationships, Victoria remarked. You'd think professional lawyers would be more adaptable. Her comments were clearly directed at Chioma, though she was careful not to mention names. The other associates exchanged glances, beginning to piece together the implications of Victoria's observations. 2 weeks into David's assignment, Chioma received an unexpected visit from her younger sister, Adaeze, who was studying medicine at the University of Lagos. Adaeze had always been perceptive about her sister's emotional state, and she immediately noticed that something was troubling Chioma. "Sister, you look terrible," Adaeze said bluntly during dinner at Chioma's apartment. When was the last time you slept properly or ate a real meal? Chioma tried to deflect her sister's concern, blaming work stress and the demands of her new position. However, Adaeze was persistent, and eventually Chioma found herself sharing the entire story of her relationship with David. "You're in love with him," Adaeze said simply after hearing the full account. "And from what you've told me, he's in love with you too. So why are you both choosing to be miserable instead of fighting for your happiness?" Chioma explained the professional complications and the potential damage to their careers. Adaeze listened thoughtfully before offering a perspective that surprised her older sister. "Sister, you've always been so focused on what other people think, on following rules and meeting expectations. But what about what you want? What about your own happiness?" The conversation with Adaeze forced Chioma to examine her priorities in a new light. She had spent her entire adult life building her career, achieving every goal she had set for herself. But the success felt meaningless without someone to share it with, particularly without David. In Port Harcourt, David was reaching similar conclusions. The oil company case had been resolved successfully, with his investigation uncovering evidence. That led to a favorable settlement for the affected communities. The victory should have been satisfying, but David found himself thinking more about Chioma than about his professional achievement. On his final night in Port Harcourt, David sat on his hotel balcony overlooking the Port Harcourt River, finally allowing himself to acknowledge what he had been avoiding for weeks. He was deeply, irrevocably in love with Chioma, and no amount of professional success would compensate for losing her. He picked up his phone and, for the first time in 3 weeks, sent Chioma a text message. "I miss you. We need to talk when I get back to Lagos." Chioma was in her office, working late as had become her habit, when David's message arrived. Her hands trembled as she read the simple words that confirmed what her heart had been telling her for weeks. She quickly typed her response. "I miss you too, more than I thought possible." The exchange of messages opened the floodgates of communication they had been suppressing. Over the next several hours, they exchanged texts sharing their thoughts and feelings from the past 3 weeks. Both admitted that the separation had clarified their priorities and strengthened their conviction that their relationship was worth fighting for. When David returned to Lagos the following evening, he went directly from the airport to Chioma's apartment. She opened the door, and they stood looking at each other for a long moment before David stepped forward and took her in his arms. "I can't do this anymore," he said, holding her tightly. "I can't pretend that I don't love you, or that our relationship doesn't matter. I've spent 3 weeks trying to convince myself that my career is more important than my happiness, and I can't make myself believe it." Chioma pulled back to look into his eyes. "I've come to the same conclusion. I don't want to spend my life wondering what could have been if we had been brave enough to choose love over fear." They spent the evening talking about their options and their future. Both had reached the decision that they were willing to face, whatever professional consequences might result from making their relationship public. They would no longer hide their feelings or sacrifice their happiness for the approval of colleagues who might not understand their choice. The next morning, David and Chioma arrived at the office together, making no attempt to hide their relationship. They walked into the building hand in hand, prepared to face whatever reactions their colleagues might have. The response was immediate and varied. Some colleagues seemed genuinely happy for them, while others appeared shocked or disapproving. Victoria Nwosu looked furious, realizing that her attempts at manipulation had failed. Mr. Thompson called both David and Chioma into his office later that morning. They sat together, united in their decision to face whatever consequences their relationship might bring. "I trust that your personal relationship will not interfere with your professional responsibilities," Mr. Thompson said after a long pause. "The firm values both of your contributions, and we have no interest in losing talented employees over personal matters. However, I expect complete professionalism from both of you during work hours. His response was more understanding than either had dared to hope. While their relationship would undoubtedly face scrutiny and challenges, they had taken the first step toward building a future together based on honesty and mutual support. 6 months later, David and Chioma were engaged to be married. Their relationship had weathered the initial storm of office gossip and professional skepticism, emerging stronger and more committed than ever. They had learned that true love required courage, honesty, and the willingness to fight for happiness, even when the path forward seemed uncertain. Their wedding, held in Chioma's hometown of Enugu with family and friends from both their personal and professional lives in attendance, was a celebration of two people who had chosen love over fear, and found that their professional and personal lives could coexist beautifully when built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection.